Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to sit down and put together some commentary on my performance from the North American Championships this past weekend. So going into this meet, as you all know, it was highly anticipated. It was going to be a tough battle between me, Mike Touchier, Bryce Krawczyk, and Kalen Godoy from Belize as well. And going into the meet, as one of those contenders, my approach was just, hey, we have to make every single lift and try and put together as big of a total as possible while kind of letting the other guys potentially make mistakes. And they are consistent lifters, so I did not anticipate that happening very often, which is why there's so much pressure to make so many lifts. So here's my opening squat. I would say my squats at this meet felt better than squats have in years at a competition, and I would kind of lend that to doing a cut early and not having to do as much of a water cut. Now, on that first attempt, I did get a red light from the center judge saying that I jumped the rack command, which if you go back and look at the footage, he definitely swung his hand forward well before I started moving. So I'm not sure if that was just a little confusion or maybe it was a depth call that was miscommunicated. But either way, we fixed that and nailed a solid second attempt here at 342.5 kilos. Coming in, the plan was that squat was going to be somewhere in that 350 to 355.5 kilo range. Now, the North American record was set at 355, so I knew if I had a perfect day, we could kind of chip that record. And there is a big benefit on having a chip on your total. Now, what I mean by chip here is once you start getting above national and international records, you can go up by 0.5 kilogram increments rather than having to go up by 2.5. So that's why the number is so odd at 355.5. Now, the benefit to having that is your total is now 0.5 kilos up. So at the end of the meet, if someone's trying to jump you, but they don't have a chip of 0.5 on their total, they're going to have to jump you by a full 2.5. So that's why we chose this number to acquire that chip. I was feeling great. Honestly, looking back at this, there was room left in the tank. I would say definitely 2.5 kilos, maybe between 2.5 and 5, but that's actually what I prefer to have on meet day. It makes the most sense to just make all three of your squats. This was a solid 7 or 8 kilo PR on my squat, so huge PR. Build momentum into the bench press, and then it's deadlift where you worry about placing. Now, here on bench training also went very well. I was training at that lower body weight, and I was much more diligent on my pauses than nationals. Now, at nationals, I hit 210, and I missed 215, and probably the most disappointing part of my performance at nationals. So I was excited to kind of overcome that miss that I had. So here, 205 opener, moved really well. Nice handoff from the handoff guy. It's very important if you are competing internationally to make sure that you communicate your handoff instructions very clearly. You'll see on the second attempt, I explain it again, just because, hey, there's 8, 10, 12 other lifters in the flight. You can't expect the handoff guy to remember everyone's instructions between each round. So I just re-explain it. 212, which is 2.5 kilos above my second attempt from nationals in February. And as you see this, it was very comfortable. You know, I think that's the perfect word for it. It was a perfect second attempt. It wasn't too extremely fast, but it was nice and smooth. Now, coming off, there's a decision, because my original plan was to go 212, then 217 or 220, one of those two numbers. Now, anything 217 or above was a PR. I think I was personally probably strong enough for 220 on the day. But when you have such a tight competition between great lifters like we did on this day, you know, taking the 5 kilos that is more for sure is a better bet than trying to jump 7 and potentially missing out on those 7 for 2.5 extra kilos. So we took the PR. This was exciting. And I remember halfway through, I was so excited because you'll see the sticking point about mid-rep. And after I get past it, it locks out really fast. And it was just such a sigh of relief because it had been over 5 years at this point since I PR'd my bench press at 120 kilo body weight. So I'm excited to get some momentum going. And I think there was a tiny bit left in the tank. I think 220 would have been, that perfect on the line call for the day. So that sets me up really well going into deadlift. It was a huge 573 kilo subtotal. Now, I think Mike and Bryce, their subtotals were 520 and 525 going into deadlift, which means I had a substantial lead of 48 kilos and 53 kilos. Now, the thing is, they both have huge deadlifts. So these deadlifts that I had here were substantial. And had I just made one deadlift, I lose this competition. That's just how it works. Now, going into the second attempt, we knew that if I make the second attempt, Mike is going to have to pull over 393 kilograms, which would be a huge monster world record deadlift. Same thing with Bryce. He would have had to pull over the world record after the second attempt. So a whole lot was riding on this 340 right here. And overall, it moved really well, as you're about to see. I would say it moved about the same as Nationals back in February. So walking off, I was thinking there was probably 10-ish kilos left in the tank. So we'll kind of watch this here. Nice and smooth, not super fast, but not really slow, not fatiguing at all. So that was good. Going into the competition, the heaviest weight that I had pulled was 350 kilos, 770, and it was pretty handily done. Keep in mind, all of my deadlifts in training, my heavy ones, are done after heavy squatting and benching. So I have a good idea of what I'm going to be able to do on meet day. Now, this is where this last attempt, this is my biggest regret. I certainly made a mistake, and watch for this as I get set up, right? So I go down, I grab the bar first with my right hand, and then whenever I grab it with my left hand, it starts to roll into a divot out in front of me. And at this moment, I should have stopped, right? The professional thing to do would be to back off, reset my setup, and do it over again. Now, in the moment, you let emotions get going. You think you're in too deep on your setup. And my thought was, I'll just pull it back into myself. So watch here. You'll see this better on the replay because they don't show me grabbing the bar. Of course, I covered it up, but oh well, you'll still see it. Whenever I grab with my left hand, it starts to roll. I decide to just continue with the attempt, which was the mistake. There's the rolling. I pull it back into myself, and I sat down into the rep. And what that did was it put me in a slightly worse position. Whenever I started pulling, my hips kicked up and it got in front of me. And as soon as I sensed that I was in that poor position, I just let it go because in my mind, I knew I had locked up first place. I think I could have kept grinding on that rep, and who knows if I would have finished it. But to me, the risk of injury wasn't worth it, especially because the wind probably wasn't riding on that. Now, sitting back, it all worked out because I did have the wind locked down, but that could have been a big mistake for me to give up early because in the back of my head, I didn't think it was necessary, right? So moving forward, I'm looking forward to redeeming that deadlift. I'm glad to get a win against top tier components, Mike and Bryce and Kalen as well. All those guys are super great lifters, but I had a blast. I just want to say thank you all for following along with the journey. I'm going to have a 2-part long video come out for you all, kind of depicting my entire ride up into and after North American, so keep an eye out for that. As always, like and subscribe, and happy lifting.